Part 18. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 172. His own home, he didn't want to stay there for a moment anymore. Along the way, Lucid looked out the window without saying a word, put his hands on his thighs, and didn't even look at her. Sierra asked him, "Are you angry? Is it hard to see?" He turned back and frowned. Sierra thought for a moment and opened the gummies she had just brought from home, then took one of the milk-flavored ones and put it in her mouth. She leaned forward and handed the candy half-bitten to her lips in front of Lucid. His eyes darkened, he hugged her waist and took the candy into his mouth. The sandwiched sugar dough is wrapped with cheese, and a hint of sweetness bursts from your lips. After feeding the candy, Sierra wanted to step back, but the back of her head was tightly wrapped by a big hand. She had no way to retreat, and he kept pressing forward step by step. After an unknown amount of time, her eyes were filled with mist. Seeing that she was about to cry, Lucid finally stopped his hand and pressed his fingertips on her lips. "This is your usual trick. Is it sweet?" Sierra asked softly, cradling his neck. With a low voice, Lucid gently pinched the soft flesh around her waist and said, "You can feed me like this in the future." She raised her head. "Then you're still angry?" "Angry? Then we won't feed you anymore." Sierra was about to push him away and sit back. Her waist tightened, and the man's arms wrapped around her again, and her heavy breathing fell into her ears. "Feed her again, and I won't be angry anymore." Terry, who was driving, glanced at the rearview mirror, his fair skin turning slightly red. When the car stopped at the entrance of Mawson Laundry Factory, Lucid took the initiative to open the door on the other side and helped out Sella, who was a little weak in her legs. After such a long time, this was the first time she came to the laundry factory run by Lizzie. It looked similar in size to hers, but there were 4 or 5 hills of clothes piled up in the open space inside. It looked like it was busy with business. The iron door was ajar, and the gatekeeper knew her and greeted her politely. Sierra walked around the piles of dirty clothes and just stepped into the laundry factory when a wave of heat with a strong scent of perfume hit the floor. She stopped immediately. So hot. The factory did not have any cooling measures. More than 30 skinny black slaves were crowded in the factory, scrubbing and washing clothes in their hands. Lizzie also spent a lot of money to buy several steam irons. The freshly dried clothes were piled in baskets, waiting to be ironed one by one. The dispersion of steam made the temperature in the factory even higher. Ahem. Cough. There were a lot of coughing sounds, and every slave's white hair was wet and hanging on his forehead, his clothes were wet with sweat, and his cheeks were sunken and his face was depressed. Long-term and high-intensity work has almost exhausted their bodies. The nobles did not regard black slaves as human beings, and the consequences that Sierra had expected were now real, and even worse. "They are in very bad condition. Why aren't they allowed to rest?" she asked the steward who came over. "There is no way. There is a time limit for each batch of orders. If you do not finish washing within the specified time, you will be deducted," the manager said. In order not to lose money, Mr. Lichi asked everyone to work overtime overnight, but fortunately these black men slaves are used to being accompanied by illness, so this little condition won't be a problem. People in the working class also look down on these colonial slaves from the bottom of their hearts. A black slave woman was ironing clothes. Her body swayed slightly. After only a few seconds, she fell backwards and fainted. The commotion over there caught Sierra's attention, and she went straight over and ordered as the owner, "Send people to the hospital first. It would be bad if it is an infectious disease." "No," the steward immediately stopped him. "The master said that all this batch of goods must be processed first. Now there are a few people temporarily vacant for hospitalization, and no one can take the position." But she looked like she was going to die. Sierra didn't listen to the advice at all, and took the initiative to squat down and help lift the fainted woman. She looked at Lucid. "I want to take someone to the hospital." He understood, turned to the steward and repeated the same words. The other person's eyes were blank. Soon, a car belonging to the factory loaded up the unconscious black slave and several caregivers and rushed to the hospital. The test results came out quickly, but things were unexpected. The black slave who fainted was lucky not to suffer from any infectious disease. He was just pregnant and had a miscarriage due to the high-pressure environment. Since she was young and didn't mind high-risk surgeries, Sierra advanced money to buy abortion pills so that the slave girl could have a clean abortion. In the ward, 2 black slaves who spoke Larini language took care of the woman who woke up and cried bitterly. Sierra stood aside with sore eyes. Knowing that they understood her words, she said, "My father is getting married at Mawson Manor on the 14th of this month. All the money from the factory's operation has been invested in the wedding decoration. He is not willing to use the money to improve your lives. I'm terribly sorry." Under the surprised eyes of everyone, she bent down and apologized. Lizzie grabbed her arm and pulled her up. "What are you doing?" "Don't talk." Sierra pushed his hand away and said to the slaves, "My laundry factory has recently experienced a reduction in orders and hot weather. All the money earned has been used to maintain the daily expenses of the factory. It is also very expensive. Sorry, I can't help you." She took out her wallet, took out the large denomination banknotes including the few gold coins, and put them into their hands. "I can't take the money at home, and I don't have much of my own. You use it first. Come to the hospital to check on your health when you have time." "I know you, miss." The black slave lying on the bed with hazy eyes coughed a few times and said, "I heard that you still spend a lot of money to transport ice cubes to your factory every day. Even if the factory is out of business, you are still persisting. Pay them a monthly salary." Sierra sighed. "Well, we are all women and we don't treat each other differently. It was my father and stepmother who went too far. I'm sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for. You are so kind. I am very lucky to have a companion working at your place and in good health." The black slave smiled sadly. Sierra thought for a while. "Do you know who the father of the child is? Maybe I can help you pass on a message. We came out of a slave market. He was helping the boss carry goods at the dock. His name is Ren." "Okay, have a good rest and go back tomorrow." Cyril left with Logosied and went straight to the port terminal. He put his arm around her waist and asked, "Did you do it on purpose?" Sierra asked him to pull down the window and let in the wind coming from the sea for a while, then turned to look at him. "You said there is an infectious disease in the factory. It's not the pregnant woman, it's the 2 people who came with you. You even stuffed money into them with your own hands." Logosied pinched her face. "Aren't you afraid that something will happen?" "Aren't you here?" Sierra said this seriously, hugging his neck with a smile and kissing his face. "This will cure the disease." "Yeah." Logosied curled his lips and chuckled happily. "After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 173. Before sunset, Sierra found the black slave Lane who was carrying goods at the dock. He had just gotten off work and had a rare moment of personal time with a group of people of the same color gathering together to smoke cheap cigarettes. When Sierra called him out, he was still a little confused until he heard her talk about the black slave. "She had a miscarriage? Our child? Well, life in the factory is not good, and most people are living a miserable life." Sierra sighed. "She asked me to tell you that if you are free in the evening, go to the hospital to see her." The man nodded and didn't speak for a long time, but took a heavy drag on his cigarette. Before leaving, Sierra deliberately whispered to Logosied, "If the Mawson laundry factory continues like this, all the black slaves will die of illness. I really hope they can rise up and resist once. As long as Dad's wedding cannot be held on the 14th, we will use the money to treat their illnesses." The words were not loud enough, but they were enough to reach the ears of the strong black slave. Sierra got into the car and looked at the thoughtful expression on the man's face in the afterglow, knowing that he had achieved his goal. While there was still some time, she made another trip to her factory, and thoughtfully told them what happened at the Mawson laundry factory next door. She also asked them to report any illness in time before finishing the day's trip and going home. Before getting out of the car, Luociet still held her and rubbed the crook of her neck. "When can you sleep with me?" "Wait until you grow up," Sierra prevaricates casually. "Grow up? Sierra, I am 400 years old this year." Luociet showed his age and smiled half-heartedly. Sierra's face didn't change. "Then wait until I grow up. Go back quickly, good night." She rubbed his face, opened the door and got out of the car. At the same time in the hospital, the black slaves who were still in the hospital were chased by the stewards of Mawson laundry factory, who asked them to return to the factory immediately to continue working. During the urging, the black slaves who had just had a miscarriage fell weakly to the ground. This scene happened to be seen by the men coming from the dock. Angry, he swung his fist out, causing quite a chaos in the hospital. The incident didn't stop until the police came to take the person away. The next day, she learned about this from the manager of her laundry factory. Sierra deliberately asked a few black slaves in her factory to bring money to bail the people out. By the way, she once again expressed her hope that they would rise up and resist, without taking into account herself. She wanted to righteousness destroys relatives. Lizzie's wedding is coming soon, and the decoration in the manor is basically completed. They will first go to the church to complete the wedding ceremony, and then return to the manor to entertain all the guests. The banquet will be lively for 3 days and 3 nights, and Lizzie will pay for all the expenses incurred during the period. The wedding day is getting closer and Anaxi is also very excited. For more than a month, she has not caused any trouble to Sierra. Instead, she often goes out every day just to meet someone. A system arranged for her, enough people to kill Sierra. A passionate vampire, Jeremy. It is said that his relatives killed many people because of their love for humans and exposed their identity, which led to Rose Hill sentencing her to death. Vampires are very strong towards any relationship and find it difficult to let go of it, and the same goes for family members. The family wanted Rose Hill to experience the loss of a loved one, and their target was Sarah. With the help of the system, Anaxi took the initiative to approach Jeremy and spent a month getting him to put down his guard and make friends with her. Today, she got Jeremy's venom. Rose Hill is coming back soon. I can't stay in this land anymore. Jeremy, who had a pair of peach blossom eyes, was perfectly born. He stroked Anaxi's lips and placed a kiss on them. Baby, try to create a wound on Sierra and spread the venom on her. She will die suddenly in front of you soon. We have the same goal and I will succeed. Anaxi put away the glass bottles, came out of the dark street corner and left quickly. The night before the wedding, Sierra received a call from her laundry. The black slaves at the Mawson laundry factory next door went to the hospital for a checkup and were diagnosed with an infectious disease. After hearing this, Lizzie just sent someone to the hospital to buy some cheap granules for everyone to drink. This didn't work at all and completely pissed off all the forbearing black slaves. Sierra knew that the matter was stable, so she hung up the phone, dialed another one to Calida, and whispered to her, "Help me prepare some rotten leaves and rotten eggs and send them to them. Yes, tomorrow morning." After hanging up the phone, Sierra started to get excited. She was looking forward to the big scene tomorrow. Chiao 11 took her daughter Anna and talked all night long, and the two of them were so excited that they stayed up all night. Early in the morning, with the help of the maid, Josie put on the wedding dress that represented the wife she would become. Having such a high-profile wedding after she was over half her age was a dream she had planned for several years and finally came true. She met Lizzie, who was wearing a suit and half of her belly was protruding. Her lips trembled and she stretched out her hand to him. "Master, he is really radiant today." Lizzie held her hand in a good mood. Let's go. The manor was filled with guests, some of whom came from far away to attend the wedding and stayed here at night. There were high-ranking officials and rich people among the crowd, and everyone was dressed in elegant clothes. The Loki Sira followed alone at the back of the convoy on a black horse. They were going to the church in the center of the town to get married there. The residents on the street knew early on that Mr. Lizzie was getting married. Many people were lying on the windows on the second floor to watch the excitement. Candies were thrown out from time to time in the large queue. This is Strategist, so that the car will run slowly and everyone will have enough time to see Ms. Josie in the open carriage. Even though she is old, her wedding dress is studded with diamonds, which is extremely luxurious. The black slaves in the Sierra laundry factory often came out and broke in, so that the whole street and the slaves in the house heard about Lizzie's good deeds. He had no money to pay the black slaves or even to see a doctor, but he let his lover wear a diamond-encrusted dress. This fire was instantly ignited. Parking. With a bang, a large number of slaves dressed in plain clothes, with white hair and black leather suddenly poured out of the streets and alleys. Their handmade banners were held high, holding some rotten vegetable leaves in their hands, and pointed at the stunned people. The wedding convoy clamored. Master Lizzie! Please stop the car. Ciro looked at the visitor, raised her brows, and smiled. These people quite listened to her advice, and if they wanted to make banners, they would make banners, and if they wanted to use rotten vegetable leaves, they would use rotten vegetable leaves. A girl who spoke fluently shouted, "We protest! We protest!" What's going on? The guests surrounded only came to attend the wedding, and now this big battle made them panic. Mr. Lizzie's Mawson laundry factory works 20 hours a day, and the slaves work for you no better than animals. Even if you are pregnant and have a miscarriage, you have to be rushed back from the hospital in the middle of the night to wash clothes. There is an infectious disease in your body, you only give us useless heat-clearing granules. You are going too far. Give us money to treat the disease. Give us money to treat the disease. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 174. Sira silently asked the horse to take a few steps back to ensure that those rotten vegetable leaves could not be thrown to her. Then she stopped and started to watch the show with peace of mind. Lizzie never expected that this group of people would rush out in groups so boldly, and he never thought that it would happen on such an important day as a wedding. Security was not considered at all, only the accompanying servants from the manor. He barely stood in front to stop the crowd. But facing a group of black slaves who may be infected with infectious diseases at any time, the servants all looked frightened and looked like they would run away at any time. The crowd that was originally there to watch the wedding suddenly started whispering among themselves. Oh my God, even though they are slaves, as their master, how can they not treat infectious diseases? What if they infect us? Do you know how many laundry orders the Mawson laundry has every day? At that time, my husband thought it was cheaper than Miss Sarah's laundry next door, so every time I sent the clothes to them for washing. Now it's fine, I have to go home and burn the clothes. Well, what if we get infected by an infectious disease? Speaking of which, these black slaves are pitiful. They only sleep 4 hours a day. They are really worse than animals. Otherwise, look at Ms. Josie, whose mistress is in charge. All the diamonds on her body are squeezed out in this way. I heard earlier that Mr. Lizzie was obsessed with his mistress, which made Miss Sira's life miserable. Now it seems that the rumors are true. He is really an old fool. Although they did not regard slaves as human beings and looked down upon them from the bottom of their hearts, this kind of oppressive behavior particularly resonated with the working class people, and many people's eyes changed when they looked at the Lizzie family. Those eyes were like sharp knives, piercing the family again and again. Lizzie couldn't help but stand up with a cane and explained, "All the clothes in the factory have been dried and sterilized. There is no possibility of contracting infectious diseases. Don't worry, everyone. As for the workers in the factory, I will take them there as soon as my wedding is over. When we see a doctor in the hospital and we treat him or her, I will never pay a penny less." If he had left early, this would not have happened. No one among the slaves believed it. "Master Lizzie, you are talking nonsense. All your money has been invested in this wedding." "Don't think we don't know," a black slave shouted. "You don't have much money to treat us. You will only exploit us. We protest." She was also taught these words. Sierra tightened the corners of her lips and tried to look sad, even though her eyes were already full of smiles. "Okay. Okay. That's enough." Lizzie stomped her crutches, her face flushed. "Tell me. What else do you want? Everyone needs to be treated. You have to pay comfort money for Noah's miscarriage due to the harsh factory environment, and he also has to get 8 hours of sleep a day. Lunch can't be just a little brown bread. We need some organic vegetables for nutrition. We want a big order the dormitory." "What are you thinking?" Xiao Qian was the first to quit. She stood up quickly and scolded angrily, "We opened the factory to serve more workers. If you sleep 8 hours a day, the accumulated who will do the work? Who will pay back the money I bought you? Organic vegetables? That's not suitable for you to eat. It would be nice to have steamed buns." Snapped. Someone threw a rotten egg directly up, hitting her diamond-encrusted chest fabric directly. The bad egg's turbid egg liquid splashed out, and Josie was stunned for a moment. "Ah!" 3 seconds later she screamed, tears welling up in her eyes. Her beautiful wedding was ruined, and so was her expensive wedding dress. The rich people huddled in the carriages were covered by carriages. Seeing this scene, they found a strange sense of security and began to whisper to each other in low voices. From time to time, they cast strange glances at the farce in front of them. Anna 11 saw her mother being beaten with eggs and being insulted. She could no longer bear it and got out of the car behind her. She bravely stood on the open carriage and blocked Josie with her body. She was weak and beautiful, and her white dress was fluttering in the wind, and her eyes were full of tears, which made these black slaves embarrassed to throw things at her. The protagonist's own Holy Mother's halo begins to take effect. "We will pay, but today is the wedding day that my mother has been waiting for several years. It is very grand. Can you please wait until this matter is over and then come to the manor to collect the money?" Josie immediately pulled her and whispered from behind, "Do you know whether our income or liability is ours? Everything they say costs us a lot of money, and then who pays it?" Sister Sira's Anaxi turned around and looked at Sira, who was pretending to be a stranger at the back of the motorcade. She clenched her fists and sobbed, "We are all a family, and our family's factory is like this." In this critical moment, Sierra, you can't stand back and face them. You came up with all these ways of squeezing workers. You can't let mom and dad take the responsibility like this. In an instant, Sierra became the target of public criticism, and countless pairs of eyes looked at her. She tightened her grip on the reins, bit her lip, and looked at a loss. I have no money." Sierra, who had already saved a lot of money in the bank, was extremely embarrassed. Compared with the glamour of that family, she only wore the simplest lace skirt today. She didn't have many decorations on her body, but it was simple and elegant. This look, contrasted with Anashi's shiny dress, had already made a final decision in the eyes of black people. "Miss Anai, please stop slandering others. Are you tired of always putting your innocent sister in the spotlight?" A female black slave shouted in fluent Larini. Before Master Lizzie took away Miss Sarah's business, the factory maintained 3 meals a day. There will definitely be meat at noon, and our clothes can be washed again. There is plenty of time to sleep, our dormitory is big and spacious, everyone has their own bed, wardrobe, and dressing table. What? Not only Lizzie was stunned, but everyone was stunned. Only some people who knew the inside story showed no expression. Which nobleman would treat a black slave like this? For so long, I have only heard of Sira. Carol, the tailor shop owner in the crowd, said, I know. I helped recommend her furniture. I also made the slaves change of clothes, and the fabrics are all very good. This matter came to a head, and the way everyone looked at Sira began to change again, almost looking at the wrongdoer. How is that possible? Lizzie said in a deep voice, wherever she got the money, it's not all mine. Khalida, who arrived on time to watch the excitement, waved her fan and said, Goodbye, Mr. Lizzie, you didn't give Sira a cent of Mrs. Clemens' assets. How many factories is this money enough for her to buy? Why are you so embarrassed to spend your money? Because she had no money to spend, she opened a butcher shop in partnership with the hunters in the mountains, and borrowed money from Rose Hill to open a factory. Now she is in debt. Ask her to pay back the money. Do you still want this old face of yours? After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 175. When Lizzie thought that this was really the case, she didn't know what to say for a moment, until Anashi was determined to get La Sira into the water. No matter what, we are all a family, and we should support each other and love each other. Shut up. Hypocritical lady. How come you can only speak but refuse to pay? You know that after the factory was robbed of all its business by you, no matter how hot the weather is, Miss Sarah will insist on having a piece of ice delivered to it every day. Everyone, cool down. Our meals and living environment have not changed at all, and even our wages are the same. Where does she get the money to compensate you people? She has been losing money because you deliberately lowered the price of laundry. Even last time Mosin, when people in the factory get sick and faint, you don't care, but it's her who pays to take everyone to the hospital for treatment. Isn't she good enough for your family? Miss Sira in those rumors is so kind, why do you, a sister, keep ostracizing her and harming her? We are not blind. Sierra has always been the leader of a charity gang, and the money path she has paved for herself is a grand one. Anaxi's face turned pale, and she looked at Sira with a look of disbelief and resentment. She was anxious to get her to say something, but Sira was unmoved and followed her example and covered her face with tears. Under the aura of being a helpful and good person, her image has become unprecedentedly tall. The black slaves would not ask for her money at all, as long as the Lizzie family compensated them. All of this is part of every step of Sira's calculations. Her quality as a novelist is destined to make all the plans easy. Play with her? That's really a joke. This is a hole she has already dug, and she can still fall into it. In the past, Anna Eleven's reputation was only in rumors, but now, she has ruined herself in front of everyone. I believe that no matter which male protagonist he is now, he has completely missed her. I can tell. Miss Anish likes to pretend to be pitiful. As long as she pretends to be pitiful, everyone will think she is right, so Sira always becomes the innocent person. Khalida repaired the knife with a smile, and watched helplessly as Anashi couldn't bear the blow, rolled her eyes, and fainted in Josie's arms. When the black slaves tried to protest again by throwing vegetable leaves and holding signs to block the road, Lizzie could no longer stand the harsh and mocking eyes and shouted angrily. That's enough. I will pay for it. I just won't get married today. I will also give you the money. Sira lowered her head, her hair acting as a curtain to block the more or less admiring or pitying gazes around her, and a smile appeared on her lips. Purpose accomplished. She kept her original mother's identity as the hostess, and also disgusted Josie and Anashi, who were always against her. According to the setting, their dream in this life is to have the identity of a decent master. Now, they will lose it forever. After hearing Lizzie say she won't get married, Josie also fainted in the car. The large army did not even get halfway to the church before they were forced to turn back the way they came. In order to get the money, the black slaves also followed the team closely. When the police sent a team to take care of it, almost all the black slaves who were bought and sold were dispatched, including some low-level workers. There are too many people and it is impossible to control them. Eric listened to his commander's order to lead a team to help. After briefly understanding the whole story, he took a group of brothers to the morning bar to drink in the name of attendance. He wanted to celebrate that his Sira had kept her position and let her kindness be seen by everyone. Sira rode alongside the open carriage, bowed her head and apologized to Lizzie. "I'm sorry, Dad, I really didn't know this would involve me." Lizzie wanted to say something, but was unable to speak. In the end, she just shook her head heavily. What else could he say? His daughter had just been doing stupid good things. She was not wrong at all. What was wrong was that something like this happened to happen at this point, causing the two factories to be compared together. After such a commotion, his factory will predictably collapse. Sierra also knew that her business would soon reach an unprecedented height, so she said, "Dad, if you think the laundry factory cannot continue to operate, you can transfer it to me and I will find a solution. Instead of wanting my property, you might as well help me resolve this matter," Lizzie replied. Sierra pursed her lips. "I have no money. You come to take over my factory if you don't have any money." He tilted his head, eyes full of scrutiny. Sierra smiled. "It's a simple reason. I have a very high reputation now and am the only helper who can help you solve your troubles." Sierra smiled without changing his expression. "He is still insisting, but I don't know if he is afraid of being beaten to death in the wilderness. If Dad still dares to have this idea." There were still many people on both sides of the road, so she lowered her voice and said, "I will have Dad's leg that is not lame broken and let you taste the pain of barren Leiden." "Sierra! How dare you?" Lizzie raised her voice, her disgusted tone, and her cruel eyes, all of which made everyone think that he really hated this daughter. But Sierra, who had unknowingly taken control of the family, was still smiling, with cold eyes that didn't seem to be joking at all. The convoy returned to the manor. The gate temporarily blocked the black slaves from outside, and they reached the gate of the castle through a long gravel road. A black, low-key classic car had been parked here for an unknown amount of time. "Whose car is this?" Lizzie asked the servant at home in a bad tone. "It belongs to Mr. Rosehill. He is waiting for Miss Sarah in the living room," the servant quickly replied. He saw the stains on Mrs. Josie's body and said in surprise, "Oh my God, sir, what happened? Mr. Rosehill? Are you looking for Sarah?" Lizzie turned around in surprise, her heart jumping up and down. "You guys have lost contact." Sierra turned over and dismounted, handed the rope to Joey, and said nonchalantly, "Who knows?" The aristocratic and wealthy people in the car who thought their trip was in vain, all their eyes lit up when they heard that the Duke of Rosehill was there. For a moment, no one came to ask about the miserable situation of Lizzie's family. Without even a look of sympathy, they all entered the castle and headed towards the living room. As the richest man in the Narani kingdom, everyone wants to befriend him. Sierra took the lead in pushing open the glass door and going in. Rosehill sat on the sofa on one side that was not exposed to the sun. She stopped and stared at him quietly. The man has a handsome profile and pale skin. He wears a neatly pressed dark green suit, a plaid tie, and a folded white handkerchief half exposed on his chest. "I don't know if you are happy or not, but I am happy writing it. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 176. He just sat there, exuding an air of nobility and asceticism, blending with the gorgeous colors around him to form a mysterious and beautiful painting. The statue-like body of the person in the painting began to turn, and slowly turned his upper body sideways, revealing his deep eyebrows, and called her flatly, "Come to me, Sira." The person who thought she would marry Xander appeared in Wally again, and the eyes looking at her were still very predatory. Sira locked the door with her backhand to prevent the nobles from coming in, and slowly walked over. Standing still in front of him, she lowered her eyes and said coldly, "Long time no see, Duke of Rose Hill." He leaned on the sofa and folded his legs. "Why did you hang up on me?" Sierra pursed her lips, "Because there's nothing to say." Rose Hill looked at her, rarely without a cold face, and a chuckle came from his lips. "I thought you were smart before, why are you stupid now?" Sierra pursed her lips, looked up at him dissatisfied, her almond-shaped eyes slightly widened. "Are you just here to make me angry? You'd better let Dad receive you, I'm going upstairs." She turned around and was about to leave, when her slender wrist was held by cold fingers. Rose Hill stood up, took out a velvet box from her pocket, stuffed the box into her palm, and said softly, "Open it and take a look." "What?" Sierra looked down at the box in her hand and opened it casually. A drop-shaped ruby necklace hung by a string. The scarlet color freezes everything like coagulated blood. Her pupils shrank and her expression changed immediately. "This necklace looks familiar. It has been published in newspapers before, and it is an eternal gemstone with a sky-high price." Sierra suddenly looked back at him and said in shock, "Isn't this the engagement gift you gave your fiancé?" Rose Hill frowned and said in a low voice, "Who told you it was for her?" Not only was she such a surprised reaction, the rich people who were locked out of the living room also had the same reaction. Lizzie experienced an incredibly bad wedding, and was thwarted by Rose Hill's manipulations again. The gossiping nobles and wealthy people began to whisper again. Didn't the newspaper say that it was an engagement gift for Xander? But the Duke came to give it to Miss Sarah himself? What does that mean? If they are a couple, what happened to the king's engagement? It's said to be a wedding, but in fact the newspaper doesn't seem to say anything about the Duke's promise. The gems being auctioned were just supposed to be given to Miss Xander. He resisted the king's proposed marriage? Want to marry Miss Sarah? It depends on the situation. Otherwise, why would you give her that priceless gem? With every additional word spoken around him, Lizzie's face turned paler. He suddenly gasped urgently and swayed, so weak that he almost fainted like his wife and daughter. Fortunately, the servant stepped forward and held him firmly. Sira licked her lips and rolled her eyes randomly. "Everyone is saying this now. The news that you and Xander are getting married has spread all over the sky, and the king has issued an order. When the monarch of a country ordered a marriage, how could the ministers resist? But then again, this matter was left to Rose Hill." Seeing his cold and arrogant look, Sira felt that he could do this even if he refused to marry. He was the heir to the throne, was extremely wealthy, and had a blood-sucking army. He was not afraid of the human king, let alone cared about his orders. Rose Hill eavesdropped on her thoughts completely. The corners of his lips curved slightly, and he was quite satisfied with her flattery. "Look, you know everything, and you are still stupidly angry. If you keep calling me stupid, I'll ignore you." Sierra got angry and returned the velvet box to him. Rose Hill directly took out the necklace inside, threw the box to the sofa aside, bent over, put his arm around her neck, and put the necklace on her. The sudden hugging movement was mixed with the faint fragrance of the man. He seemed to have sprayed rose perfume, otherwise how could the smell be so strong and heady? Sierra pressed her nose against his shoulder, her cheeks a little red. "There are many people outside, you don't know. Is it necessary to care about the food on the table?" Rose Hill didn't respond emotionally. He gently pinched the flesh of her back neck with his fingertips, stared at her chest and praised, "It's not bad." The cold temperature and touch made Sierra tremble all over and bit her lip. He asked, now you completely understand that I am not interested in Xander. The gem hanging on her chest was cold in texture. She touched it with her fingers and her voice softened, I understand. This gem is more expensive than the entire Mawson Manor. He doesn't need to say anything. This is the best explanation. Rosehill took back his hand, now, you have to apologize to me. Ah, Sierra was confused for a moment. Didn't this mean that he came to apologize to herself? You hung up the phone on me. This behavior was very rude. He was still struggling with this matter. For the sake of the sky-high price of the gem, Sierra apologized obediently, well, I really shouldn't have hung up on you so rudely. Rosehill smiled lightly, okay, I'm just here to attend the wedding banquet today. Sierra looked at the people locked outside the living room, I'm going to open the door first. It's not good to lock people out like this. As a noble, Rosehill doesn't like socializing, but with the blessing of cultivation, he won't mess around. He can still maintain his grace and occasionally say a few words to others. Sierra breathed a sigh of relief and walked up to the pale-faced Lizzie, the Duke of Rosehill is here for Dad's wedding. Do you want to go with him to say hello? You come to the study with me first. Lizzie led her into the study and took a deep breath, you already knew that the Duke would give you the necklace. You were in love before, why didn't you tell me? Sierra was almost shocked by the tone of his question. She raised her eyebrows, I never said that I was his lover, nor did I deny my close relationship with him. It was Mrs. Kyoki who always put me in the position of his mistress. Damn it, although I understand this is her profession, but my father believes in her and not me, what can I do? He had preconceived the idea that he was the Duke's lover and that he was just playing with him. How could he blame her for this? It was Josie who made all of this happen. Sierra looked at him and continued, you know everything about me, Mrs. Josie. Not long ago, she told you that I am a lover and asked me to marry a widower quickly. This is a great thing. She took a step closer and her tone suddenly changed, tell me, what should I do if the Duke of Rosehill finds out about this? Can the Duke still marry me? You are already going bankrupt, right? Dad, you can still pay the monthly maintenance fees of the manor. Rise. He followed Josie's idea and invested most of his savings. Now not only has he lost all his money, he also faces bankruptcy and loss of money. Lizzie sat on the sofa with her eyes empty. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. I have an update today. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 177. A car stopped at the gate of the manor, and Leighton got out of the car with his head wrapped in gauze, his nose bruised and his face swollen. His new wound was not healed, and he was on crutches and needed the support of a male servant. Is this wedding over so soon? He took off his hat and threw it to the servant, looking at the guests in the hall. There was an accident on the road, the servant in the manor replied. They looked at him with something strange in their eyes, and lowered their voices and said, you can come to the door another day. I'm here to give Mr. Lizzie a wedding gift and a gift for Sierra. He waved to the people behind him, and a heavy box was dragged in front of everyone. Khalida, who was well aware of the gossip, deliberately approached Rosehill and said, it seems that Mr. Leighton is going to take advantage of today to get engaged to Miss Sierra. Mrs. Josie said that they are a perfect match. A perfect match? For a widower? She is deliberately trying to embarrass others. Someone next to him immediately exaggerated to cater to her, Mr. Leighton is old enough to be Miss Sarah's uncle. Rosehill took a step back, avoided the group of women, and walked away slowly. Leighton soon felt that something was wrong with the expressions of the people around him. When he was leaning on a cane and holding a glass of wine, and was about to go to the living room, he stopped. Duke Rosehill, his lips twitched, and he actually called out his name with some trembling. The man came in front of him, and the height difference made him lower his head slightly. His somewhat coquettish dark red eyes were like abyss, and he was assessing the danger of the person in front of him with the eyes of a prey. The excessive pressure made Lydon panic. "What did you come to give Syrah?" Rosehill's voice was so low that people started to tremble. He thought that the Duke had cut off his relationship with Syrah, but now it seemed that was not the case at all. Most of his business relied on the money leaked from the other party's hands, so there was no way he could offend anyone. Lydon's eyelids trembled, and he raised most of his eyes to look directly into his eyes. He noticed that the eyes that were a little different from ordinary people were full of darkness and cunning. He subconsciously said, "I'm here to donate money to Miss Syrah. It is said that she owes a lot of money. I want to help. Not to support Lizzie, who was about to go bankrupt, but to her." As soon as Sierra came down from the study, she stopped on the stairs and heard what he said, a little confused about this unexpected development. "What else?" Rosehill leaned down slightly, approaching him with a pale and cold face. "Are you thinking about my woman?" He had no intention of avoiding this sentence and said it openly in front of everyone. In the past, everyone believed Josie's words and thought that Sierra was just a lover. Now this reversal has made the news overnight. Leighton didn't know what was wrong with him, his knees went weak, and he knelt in front of the man's toes in a helpless manner. "No. Mr. Rosehill, Miss Syrah and I are just friends. It was Lizzie and his wife who wanted to marry someone else, marry me in exchange for an annual alimony of 50,000 gold coins. By selling one of her daughters, Lizzie could get a large fixed amount of alimony, which caused an uproar when it was revealed. Lizzie came out of the study shortly after. After hearing these words, she covered her chest in shame, missed her steps and rolled down the stairs. Fortunately, Sarati went to the side and hid, so that he was not swept down. The servants screamed and called the doctor, and there was chaos on the first floor. Rosehill sneered, straightened up slowly and said, "Of course I believe you, Mr. Leighton, don't be so nervous." Okay, then I'll go first. This money will be used as a gift for your wedding with Miss Syrah." Leighton was helped to his feet and left the manor with surprising ease. As the only owner of the manor who was still awake, Sierra calmly asked Lizzie to be moved back to the bedroom, and asked the servants to bring all the snacks prepared in the kitchen to entertain, and let the guests go to the lawn outside or the living room to chat. After completely dividing the crowd, the farce came to an end for the time being, and Syrah looked at the person standing not far from the stairs. She took a deep breath and walked over. "What did you just say to Leighton?" "Didn't you hear everything?" He took the champagne glass from the passing servant, raised his neck and took a sip, and the moist wine stained his lips scarlet. "I'm your woman." Syrah suppressed a laugh. She had often written such domineering words in her previous novels. Rosehill lowered her eyes and stared at the dazzling gemstone pendant on her white chest, her eyes dark and dark. "The name of this red borosilicate is Eternity. It was the first time I saw it at that auction. I think it suits you very well." Syrah touched the cold stone, whose color was like blood, indicating the naming of eternal life. He never gave up on making her a vampire. Rosehill swung the wine glass, and a faint smile appeared on her pale face. "I don't bother to spend a lot of money on women, but that day I miraculously photographed the gem for you and gave it to you. This is not the first time." "So," Sierra pursed her lips and put down her hand. "So," his hand paused, his eyebrows lowered, and dark clouds began to accumulate in his eyes again. "Are you trying to show off to me? Do you want to say that you gave it to me because you love me?" Sierra had long been immune to his bad temper and asked quite calmly. The man's mood changed instantly, and he felt confused. Love, for a person who has never been exposed to love since the 14th century, still doesn't know how to define it. If you ask him how to force a prisoner to confess, he will quickly give a countermeasure. If you ask him to bring down a country's economy, he can also quickly analyze a set of methodology. Only the meaning of love has puzzled him for a long time. So it's not Sierra saw it? If not, why should I buy it for you? Just for you, he retorted, emphasizing the last sentence. Sierra thought for a while, you are just pursuing me. Men pursue women and always like to buy her things in different ways. Maybe they like her, but it is far from love. Looking at Rosehill's gloomy face, she put her hands around his waist, buried her face in the marble chest, and said softly, it's good that you like me. I'm actually very happy. I'm glad you can return. The dark clouds parted, revealing a little warmth. Sierra left him for a moment and went upstairs to change into a set of clothes. She stood at the entrance of the spiral staircase, met the man's soothing gaze, smiled, and disappeared around the corner. In terms of love, she is always the one who leads Rosehill by the nose. This is the only place where she can surpass him and distort the truth. A vampire who had not loved anyone since the 14th century had already exceeded his limits towards her. Sierra knew very well that he had already fallen in love with her. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 178. It's just that for something as ethereal as love, there is no physical reference or book theory, and it all depends on the definition of both parties. As long as she holds the sovereignty, there will be no chance of taking that step. Sierra does like every paper person, and sometimes even feels that they are alive, but this world is very different from the real world she has lived in for several years. It is strange and bizarre, and the feeling of being stripped deep in her soul is the reason why she will not give her sincerity. She knows better than anyone that she doesn't belong here. As night falls, guests from far and wide have to eat after watching the farce. The shameless Jiaoqi and Anna 11 had woken up from coma, but they still asked the servants to refuse the banquet on the grounds of poor health. Only Lizzie managed to attend the dinner. For the ruby on her chest, Sierra wore a black tutu and diamond earrings. Sitting next to Rosehill, her thin back was straight, her neck was slender, and her noble demeanor, decorated with sky-high price jewelry, was as good as his. Not to mention, it seems that the Duke and Miss Sarah are a match. Both of them look perfect. Those vague sounds of flattery reached his ears, but Sarah didn't pay attention to them, and just whispered to him, eat less, or just drink. She didn't want him to vomit it up in embarrassment when he went back later. Rosehill curled her lips, tilted her head and lowered her body, and said to her, there is a gambling party tonight, do you want to go and play? Sarah shook her head, let's do it some other time. I still have family members to take care of, and you can also take the box of gold coins that Leiden brought with you. You do not want? Of course I do, but it won't be mine if I leave it here. Why don't I give it to you directly when I pay off the debt? Sierra smiled and said, I said yes, one thing will be the same thing, you don't say no. Rosehill didn't object, but when the servant passed by with the oyster plate, he took 2 oysters and put them on her plate. His pampering silently confirmed Sierra's special status. After today, I believe that all the powerful centers of the entire Lorraine kingdom will know her name. Some people left after dinner, while others left in the morning to catch the train. Sierra stood in the vacant living room while shaking her lace bone fan. 3 days had passed since the Mawson laundry factory was exposed to infectious diseases, mistreatment of workers, and malicious miscarriage of pregnant women. On the first day, Lizzie couldn't resist the pressure. Before the big iron gate of the manor was damaged, she paid a large sum of money for the medical treatment of the black slaves and some of the purchases necessary for daily necessities. The next day, because Lizzie firmly disagreed with the expansion of the factory dormitory, more than half of the 30 black slaves chose to secretly take the money and run away, and the police launched a pursuit. On the third day, all the unfinished orders at Mawson Laundry Factory were returned, and the bosses who had cooperated with Lizzie jointly demanded that he double compensation. Need to take responsibility. In 3 days, Lizzie broke 3 teacups. I thought we could make money, but what happened? It turned out that we were already penniless. What should we do about the compensation? Tell me. What should we do about the compensation? Worried, he walked up to Josie and questioned harshly, "It was you who proposed the imitation of the Sarah factory, and it was you who dealt with the slaves and assigned tasks. Now, come up with a perfect solution for me." Chiaoki's face was covered with spit, and her face turned pale. "You can't blame me entirely for this, sir, that's what you agreed to." Anna 11, who was beside her, was also too shy to express her anger. She originally proposed the imitation idea to her mother, but who knew they would end up like this? "I heard from the servant that Baron Leiden sent a box of gold coins to Syrah yesterday. How about we use that box of money to solve the problem first?" She tried to come up with an idea. "Where's Sierra?" Lizzie immediately asked the servant as soon as she heard that there was a solution. "Miss Sarah went to the factory early in the morning." The servant lowered his head and responded. Because of the accident at the Mawson Laundry Factory, Sierra's factory orders surged, and coupled with the previous orders from wealthy people, the slaves in the factory also began to work overtime. However, the treatment she gives is very good. She does not force everyone to work overtime, but adopts a voluntary system. Every extra hour counts as 1 hour's wages, so as to stimulate everyone's enthusiasm. In just 1 day's work, the manager's hands cramped up while keeping records, and the smile on his lips never let go. "Miss Sarah, you are really amazing. In just 1 day, you brought back all the business you had done some time ago and increased it 5-fold. Sarah gave him a few gold coins and said with a smile, "Work hard. You will be very busy in the next few days. This is also your overtime pay." She has now paid off Rose Hill's debt and has become a rich woman. But even in front of family members with whom you have a bad relationship, you still need to pretend to be poor appropriately. For example, as soon as she came home, she took off her wide felt hat and asked the servant to put it away, when she was called into the living room. "Sierra, our family is really in trouble right now because of the laundry factory. Where did the box of gold coins that Leiden sent yesterday go?" Lizzie asked immediately. Sierra thought for a moment and suddenly realized, "Ah, you mean that box of money. I gave it to Mr. Rosehill." "What happened?" Lychee made fists with both hands angrily and waved them in the air vigorously. "What? How could you just give it away? It's not a gift." "Dad, have you forgotten that I still have several thousand gold in debt?" Sierra responded with a smile. Seeing this family's faces turn pale, she felt very happy. "Mawson Laundry Factory is losing money. We owe a lot of debt. From the time we opened the factory to now, all our work has been in vain." Lizzie stared at her closely. "Now that you have paid off your debts, how much money can you use to help your family?" "No money," Sierra replied simply. "The factory run by my father has made me lose money one after another with overwhelming prices. Why do you think I have money?" "Sierra, we have just collected a round of rent from our tenants, and now we have no savings to keep us company." Josie took a deep breath and forced her, "We still have a property in Leicestershire. If this crisis comes, if we can't make it, we can only sell the land over there to fill the vacancy." Sierra's face instantly sank. "That is my mother's last house. If you dare to sell it, I will not only strip Dad of his title, but also make Anasai completely lose everything she owns now." Her aura is intimidating, and she doesn't seem to be joking at all. Moreover, public opinion is now on her side. The entire kingdom knows that she has a close relationship with Rose Hill. Who dares to buy her mother's house? Lizzie sat back on the sofa. "The only thing we can do is sell the apartment we live in now. We can no longer afford the maintenance fees of the manor and the wages of servants." "Master, This is our only home. How could you? If you want to sell it, you are also selling the house in Leicestershire. Xiao 11 wanted to say something more, but was slapped hard by the man. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Shire. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 179. For Sierra, that is the only property left by her mother. What will others think if I sell it? Lizzie pointed at her nose and said angrily, everyone in the town thinks I am being led by you. Walking on the nose, are you really going to destroy me? No sir. I just think this is the best way. We have lived in this manner for more than 10 years, are you really willing to sell it? Josie covered her face and cried bitterly. She was originally a mistress, and she only wanted status and money with him for many years. How could the two most precious things be lost at the same time? Anai said, there are two valuable pianos in the piano room. Miss Khalida and Mrs. Giganti also sent a lot of jewelry before. If they are sold, they may be able to fill the gap. Sierra sat down on a sofa, covered her lips and chuckled, you are really ridiculous as a sister. As long as you encounter any difficulties, you will only try your best to take money from me. She looked at her with pale eyes and mocked, besides being a bloodsucker with a clear conscience in this family, what have you contributed to this family? How many times do you have to say something like this before you understand? Anna 11's face turned pale, I don't even have the brains to make money. I just want to be a delicate flower in the greenhouse with peace of mind. Sierra touched her chin and raised the corners of her lips slightly, what a failure. Anaxi leaned on the sofa, breathing rapidly, what on earth do you want to say? Let's do this. Sierra turned to look at Lizzie, I will take over the Mawson laundry factory, and the healthy black slaves in it will be transferred to me. I will buy them at half the price that my father paid for them. Didn't you say you have no money? Xiao Qian immediately grasped the point. Sierra stood up, I have no money, but my friend Khalida is the daughter of the President of the Bank of England. I can ask her to lend money to my family at low interest rates. Even if I dispose of the factory to you, the remaining compensation will not be enough to pay the compensation. Lizzie said with a dark face, everyone thinks that the clothes washed in our factory are infected with infectious diseases. We not only have to pay liquidated damages, but also compensation. Money for clothes. That's not my business. Sierra smiled and said, Dad has to pay for his immature behavior. In order to withdraw funds, the desperate Lizzie finally agreed to borrow money from the bank and buy his factory and the remaining healthy slaves at half the price. And this matter spread somehow. In order to help her father's factory come back to life, Sierra took the initiative to borrow money to buy the Mawson laundry factory. All the black slaves who ran away ran back. However, because some people had infectious diseases, Sarah did not accept them for the sake of reputation, leaving only healthy black slaves to share some work in his laundry factory. She maliciously lowered the price to buy the Mawson laundry factory, which was a sure profit for her. Of course, this amount of money was not enough for Lizzie to repay her debt, so he forced Josie to dismantle the diamond-encrusted wedding dress to pieces, and tampered with Anna 11's dowry at the bottom of the box. If you still want to persuade me to touch Sierra's property, then get out of this house. Lizzie's eyebrows were raised coldly, and the disgust towards Xiao Qian in her eyes was almost overflowing. No matter how they tried to persuade them, they were both so tough that there was no room for maneuver. After hearing too many rumors outside, he would naturally start to reflect and subconsciously resist every suggestion from Xiaoqi. The maintenance fees and servant wages at Mawson Manor were too high. Only a week later, Lizzie, who could no longer afford the expensive fees, was forced to put the house for sale at the door. The family temporarily moved to the town and lived with those who lived in small buildings. Anna 11 cried for several days and stayed in closed doors all day long. Josie has also been depressed since her failed wedding. Only Sierra is still busy attending classes, socializing and making money every day, living a fulfilling and happy life. That afternoon, as soon as she moved all her belongings into a bedroom that was twice as small as before, she received a letter from the military camp. Since many servants were laid off, the three-story villa they lived in was only equipped with 3 servants, and they always had multiple responsibilities. It's a letter from Mr. Eric. Sierra took the envelope, which contained an invitation card. She glanced at the red envelope held by the servant and asked, "Is this mine too?" "No, this is the reply Miss Anai received," the servant replied. Sierra nodded. She didn't want to interfere with who the other party was writing to, so she just opened the envelope in her hand. It read Worley Soldiers Friendship Evening with Peace Hospital Nurses. To put it bluntly, it is a blind date. She put the card on the table and opened the closet. "Eric, how long are you going to sit on the sofa? Look at the eyes of those girls, they can't move away from you." The strong man came over and sat down with a wine glass, complaining, "They are all waiting for you to bring a female companion over, and I don't even have a chance to hold one." Eric kept staring at the door that opened from time to time, watching the women coming in and out, without saying a word. The man on the side poked the strong man with his elbow and said, "Come on, he wrote an invitation letter to Count Lizzie's daughter in the military camp, and is still waiting for her to come. How can he still like this place, girl?" "Who? That Anai? I heard that she seemed to be Eric's playmate since childhood." "No, it's Sierra." There were many cars parked at the entrance of the party. Sierra got out of the car and walked to the street to watch Joey's car go away. Just as he was about to enter the entertainment venue of the party, a group of people in black who had been waiting at the door for a long time came up, each with a band on his chest, wearing a cross and wearing strange clothes. She was surrounded by strange people who suddenly appeared, and her expression was still a little confused. "Miss Sarah, we have been waiting for you for a long time." "You are church members. We have received intelligence that a pagan devil is said to have appeared in Wally." Sierra's heart suddenly sank. "I don't quite understand." "Then let me make it clearer. The devil appears in Wally. The devil will transform into a werewolf over 2 meters tall on a full moon night. His body is covered with hair. He can use witchcraft and is extremely evil." Sierra clenched her handbag instantly, her face strong and calm. "Who told you?" "It's the letter you wrote to us, have you forgotten it?" She opened her eyes slightly, in disbelief. She didn't tell anyone about Eric becoming a werewolf, let alone have any contact with the church here. After thinking about it for a while, I realized that this kind of thing could only be done by Anna 11. She was the only person other than herself who knew the truth. Sierra pursed her lips and responded coldly, "Obviously I really don't know what you are talking about. Someone pretended to be my name and framed you. I have never heard of such ridiculous things as there being werewolves in Wally. A tribe of hunters in the dark forest. You said that the people there turn into wolves at night. We have already sent people there. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 180. I don't know what you're talking about. A believer looked at the door of the party and said, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, there is one left here. Miss Sarah and us, please go in and find it. The church agrees to your request of 50,000 gold coins as reward." Sarah couldn't refuse and turned around, so someone grabbed her wrist and dragged her into the party. There were cigarettes, alcohol, and flickering lights inside. The scene was dim, and the dance of the soldiers and nurses was ambiguous. Eric was dismissing another beautiful woman who came over, and heard the person next to him say, "Sierra is here, but who is the person next to her? It doesn't look like a local one." He immediately looked at the door. A beautiful girl in a brown dress was holding a handbag on her abdomen with both hands. Her joints were white and she looked nervous. Next to her was a strange-looking man wearing a suit and a black cape, with a black hood covering most of his face. That guy looks really cool. What role is he playing? Eric did not answer the words of the people around him, stood up and walked toward Sierra. As soon as the tall and strong young man stood up, he stood out. She saw him at a glance and silently made a mouth shape with her lips. Don't come here, it's dangerous. I heard that he sneaked into the military camp and became a low-ranking soldier. Miss Sarah, who do you think he is? The man in black robe bent his arm, and the hand hidden under the robe held a gun in case of emergency. Need. I don't know. Sierra was still winking at him desperately. Hearing his words, Eric stopped. Is it him? The strongest soldier? I don't know, Sierra replied quietly. The dance melody in the banquet hall stopped abruptly, and the singing woman turned into a man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our friendly party is temporarily over. Something happened. Please leave. His appearance was disappointing, but the music had stopped, and many men in uniforms came in at the gate. Everyone felt that the atmosphere was wrong, especially the delicate nurses, who chose to leave under the escort of the soldiers. The spacious hall became increasingly empty, and Eric fell into the last group of people and slowly walked towards Sierra. A delicate and small dagger was suddenly pressed against Sierra's lower back. The church member obviously knew that she was very important and had already set his target on Eric. From the beginning, he was the most eye-catching among all the soldiers, and the one with the greatest mood swings. Sierra didn't dare to move, and shook her head slightly at the person approaching. Go home. She mouthed this to Eric, and he could see the anxiety in her eyes. He smelled the smell of gunpowder in the air, and saw the inconspicuous dagger at Sierra's waist. All dangers are directed at them. He looked away, put his arms around a soldier, and walked towards the door without looking back. You don't say hello to Sierra? What is she doing standing there? Stop talking, just move forward, Eric warned in a low voice. Hearing the unusual tone in his tone, the man became quiet. The moment he was about to pass by Sierra, Eric pushed his brother out of the door, held Sierra's wrist and pulled him towards him. The action took place in just 1.5 seconds. He raised his thigh and kicked the man in the abdomen. Before the other party could react, he flew backwards and smashed the vase on the shelf next to the door. Ah! Several women who were walking slowly screamed. There were soldiers left behind who were not armed. Eric shouted, "Stop them! Let the nurses get out first." Taking advantage of the chaos, Sierra said anxiously, "Eric. They went to your tribe, leave me alone. You have to go back to help." Boom! A bullet shot out rapidly, coming from an unknown direction. The target was not Eric but Sierra. Eric, who reacted quickly, put his arms around her waist and threw her down, holding her firmly in his arms. "Who did you mess with? They came after you." "It's not me." Sierra was pressed to the cold floor by him, and then quickly rolled into a circle and hid behind a couch. The man who was standing on the stage speaking spoke again, "We are members of the Royal Church of Loreni. Soldiers who have nothing to do with protecting the country, please leave. We don't want to shoot at you." Let's repeat it. One party has already used weapons. Such words are bullshit. Eric winked at the soldiers who were also hiding and said, "Cover the women and leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, the person on the stage said again, "Miss Sarah, it was you who provided us with the information about werewolves. Why did you regret it temporarily?" Eric's resolute and handsome face froze instantly, and his eyes looking at Sierra suddenly changed. "It's not me, Eric." Sierra held his face. "You believe me. The werewolves had hidden their identities and entered the dark forest for many years. They had never leaked the secret. The only exception was Sierra, who they confirmed as their friend. She knew all their secrets before she was even Eric's partner. She is the only one who knows what Eric could think of, and of course Sierra could think of. In the plot setting, Anna 11 pretended to know that he was a werewolf later, and now the only one who knows the truth is herself. Anna 11 set up a trap for her, and she couldn't defend herself at all. This damn sense of fate can't be planted on a tree branch by a werewolf because of it, right? The way Eric lowered his head and said nothing gave Sierra a strong sense of crisis. There will be no second person spreading their identity, something must have happened to his tribe. For a moment, he couldn't say the words "believe her." The pain of betrayal and the burning of love made him feel a surge of intense anger. The only thing that is certain is that even so, he is not willing to put Sierra in danger. Eric did not answer her directly. "I'll take you out first." Boom. Several more bullets were fired, penetrating the sofa and narrowly grazing the tip of Sierra's nose. Eric's ears moved slightly and he heard the sound of several pairs of footsteps approaching them. He took a deep look at Sierra, and his facial features gradually became ferocious, and the grinning look was no different from that of a wild beast. His back arched and his body began to expand rapidly. With a human body, he couldn't completely protect two people from guns. The wolf form would make him much faster. "Surround us." The voice in front of the sofa was very close. When the two of them were about to be completely exposed, Eric roared, and there was a burst of explosions in the air, and the military uniform was instantly torn into small pieces of cloth. A giant grey wolf appeared out of thin air. It roared under the dim lights, jumped over the sofa and rushed towards the nearest person. Its mouth full of fangs opened, enough to bite the opponent's entire head and pull it back. The corpse, the scene of separation, was extremely bloody. This group of church members who came from the capital were not surprised by this scene. Each race has its own laws and rules. They do not interfere with each other, but once discovered, they must be completely eliminated. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 181. Eric nimbly dodged the attack, and his huge body could easily break a person's ribs. But there were too many armed enemies here. The longer Sarah stayed, the less confident he was that he could deal with them all and keep her intact. A wolf appeared out of nowhere at the party and started killing people under the dim lights. Some of the soldiers who participated in the resistance almost thought they were hallucinating. What kind of animal is that? Why is it as furry as a horse? Come on, idiot, you don't care what it is, it's going to pounce on you and eat you. The last few soldiers rushed out of the door. Sierra was always squatting behind the couch with her head in her arms. No one paid attention to the situation on her side for the time being, but everything was too chaotic. She saw a body overturned on the sofa where she was hiding, and blood came down like rain, soaking her shoulders and skirt. Eric quickly returned to her side after killing several people nearby, his huge body lowered. Seeing him lying down on all fours, Sierra understood his intention and immediately climbed up the furry back with hands and feet. The giant grey wolf once again used the dim light as a protective color, broke the stair railing, and rushed her to the second floor of the party hall. At the end of the corridor was a window, just big enough for them to break and escape. Someone rushed up from behind. Boom. The impact of the bullet caused Sierra to fall on Eric's back. The pain from being hit on her shoulder blade made her vision darken, and her fingers clenched Eric's hair tightly. At the same time, Lucid, who was sitting in the villa playing the piano out of boredom, made a wrong note, then pressed his fingers on the keyboard, stood up amidst the harsh notes, and rushed out of the door. The contract was connected, and his heart was beating wildly, knowing that something had happened to her. Eric took Sierra out of the window, jumped directly onto the terrace of the house opposite, and then jumped from the terrace onto the roof of a house. He disappeared in an instant as fast as he could. He ran away. I didn't expect that the town of Wally actually had werewolves, Such evil devils. He should return to the dark forest and chase him. The blood on Sierra's back was getting more and more, and her legs tried their best to clamp Eric, but the blood loss made her brain dizzy, and the strength of her bloody fingers became weaker and weaker, and it was difficult to hold on to the thick wolf fur. Start sliding. She could no longer bear this roller coaster-like rooftop jump, and her strength was rapidly draining away. Eric once again jumped onto the triangular roof of a church. The tilt angle made Sierra's arms no longer able to bear the weight of his body. He slipped from the left side of his back, and his body hit the marble spire and rolled down. Sierra! Roar! Eric's brown eyes filled with panic. He immediately stopped. His turning claws scratched several deep scratches on the top of the stone. He jumped out quickly, bit it in his mouth and was about to roll off the roof. Girl! He dragged the clothes around her waist back and threw them onto her back. This kind of repeatedly rolling and spinning pancakes made Sierra reluctantly regain her consciousness. She grabbed him again, buried her face deep in the thick hair, and said in a weak voice, "I'm fine. You can just find a place to put me down and go back." The gray wolf turned back and growled at her. Of course he would not abandon her. Knowing that she was injured, he ran directly in a completely different direction from the dark forest. A few minutes later, Eric, who was completely naked and returned to his human form, was blocked in a dark alley while holding Sierra, who was bleeding profusely. Lawside found her. Seeing the pale girl, his expression changed. Sierra. Seeing him come up to grab people, Eric, who used to compete with him, directly gave the people into his hands. She was shot, you treat her. After speaking briefly, Eric transformed into a wolf again, jumped up onto the roof, and quickly disappeared under the moonlight. In Sierra's blurry vision with half-closed eyes, only that thin and evilly beautiful face was soon left. With an anxious look on his face, Lucid rushed home with the man in his arms, kicked the door shut, and rushed into the bedroom upstairs. As soon as Sierra was placed on his gorgeous quilt, the blood fainted quickly. The upper half of her clothes were directly torn by Luosied's hands. He had no time to watch the beautiful spring scenery, so he turned her over, revealing her smooth back that was mostly stained with blood. The bullet lodged in her bones but did not penetrate. Luosied never used medical tools to treat wounds, so he didn't have any at home. He only thought for a few seconds, then picked up the girl, whose upper body was only wearing underwear, from the bed and entered the bathroom. There is also fresh sea water in the bathtub that he just sent today. The land is too dry, and he often needs to change back to his original shape to moisturize his tail. Luosied hugged the girl and sat in the bathtub, and most of the water splashed out. His legs, which were wearing gray trousers on the lower body, immediately expanded and tore the trousers, and merged together to form a giant black fish tail. His palms turned into webbed claws, and his sharp nails were long enough to grab bullet fragments from the bleeding holes. Sierra lowered her head, the cold water made her wake up a little more, and the pain in the wound seemed a little numb. "Bear it, I have to help you remove the bullet as soon as possible." Luosied circled her with one hand, pressed his hand on her wound, inserted his hand in, and dug the bullet through the flesh. Hiss. Sierra trembled in pain and scratched the greasy scales under her body with her nails. "It hurts." She cried out, her messy hair stuck to her neck, mixed with blood and water. "It'll be fine soon." Luosied kissed her shoulder, and his heart ached terribly. Boom. He was very familiar with this. The bloody bullet fell into the bathtub and all the shrapnel was dug out. Sierra was completely powerless. She bent over and lowered her head, and Rawside's body, still wearing a shirt, pressed against her back. He lowered his head, opened his mouth to hold her wound, and licked the flesh that had been rolled up by digging out the bullet. A stinging yet cool comfort came from the burning wound. "That's healing." Eric sent her to Luosied intentionally. He knew that he was better than any medicine, and he still considered her even at this time. Ciro was thinking vaguely, and a conversation box like a game interface suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. A string of garbled characters formed the characters, and then quickly disappeared. Just a few seconds were enough for her to clearly read the content of the line. Sell a character, bug clearing failed, character cannot be ejected, repair is in progress. Ciro lowered her head, and all she could see was a bathtub of seawater stained red with blood. Her mind was suddenly confused, but a clear line seemed to emerge. What is certain is that Anna 11, as the protagonist, owns the system, and she must have activated some kind of mode to clear her bug. This should be shown to Anna 11. Regardless of why it suddenly appeared in front of her, she could understand the meaning of the bug clear failure, but the character could not pop up.